Oh, we lost Nico. There we go. Let me get you back. I didn't see
I
that
am
one
so sorry.
until just now. No, you're good. All right, everybody. I'm gonna still try to do this intro right. Welcome to Aquarian Anarchy. Normally we start off the show all like hype and joke. I guess we kind of did that today anyway, but we have a very serious topic and a great guest to bring to you tonight. We're going to be a little more serious because of the subject matter, and we're still gonna cut up a little bit. But we do have a very serious issue to discuss, and we want to give that issue the proper treatment. As always, take a moment right now to hit the like button. Let me go ahead and hit this banner so we can get everybody the notifications throughout the stream. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you get the notifications before we broadcast. And also make sure to share the show with your friends and family if you trust that they can handle it. 2 shares to speed the spread of this show. And take a minute to go to the Patreon and subscribe there, become an Anarch, and start your own little self-ownership kingdom. Shout out to our current Anarchs. We have Daryl, Halima, Brody, and the guys at the Brown Paper Bag Podcast, and a new one just today or yesterday, Gabriel. Appreciate all you guys already. Keep them coming. The more the merrier as far as our Anarchs go. On our Telegram chat, a lot of really good info going in there. Thank you for Daryl and Halima really bringing it lately. Now, without further ado, Nico, Marcus, and I would like to welcome an amazing guest. She is one of the most outspoken and relentless activists and advocates for victims and survivors of human trafficking in all its forms. A survivor herself, she is brilliant, courageous, and you won't find a more genuinely loving person. Ladies and gentlemen, Eliza Bleu. Welcome,
Hi,
Eliza.
Hi,
How
gentlemen.
you doing, girl?
How are you? Hi.
Doing great. Doing great.
Doing great.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, thank you so much for joining us. You and I talked earlier today, and you made a good point that because some of the folks who may be coming in to this chat via your platforms and things like that may see the Aquarian Anarchy and some of the imagery and the word and all that kind of stuff and just be like, whoa, what is this? And maybe a little alarmed maybe by some of that stuff. So Marcus and I would like to offer a little bit of because I don't know, Nico's kind of there, but he's not all the way there yet.
Oh no, he's an anarch man.
I think he is. I think he is too. He hasn't proudly puffed his chest out about it, but no. So we're not about throwing trash cans through the Starbucks windows or bombing the WTO or any of this kind of stuff. We are just about anarchy as we see it is peace, love, and freedom. And Marcus, if you want to add it to that, I'll give you the opportunity to.
I guess the best way to describe it, and some people like to use the word anarchist, some people like to use the word voluntarist. I like anarch better because it means you're self-owned, you're self-ruled, kind of like a monarch or an oligarch. I don't have any rulers. And anarchy, or the idea of anarchist philosophy, is rooted long time ago, very long story, but it's founded on the ethical understanding that we own ourselves. And for anyone who might be watching us today for the first time, thanks to Eliza, I strongly suggest you check out, and the links are below, the works of Murray Rothbard, Adam Kokesh, who is a good friend of Chad and I's, and Nico has met as well, and also Lysander Spooner. And that's really the best places to get an overview of that information. But I don't want to take up our time. Most of the people that watch our channel understand what we mean when we say anarchy. Ultimately, we're the peaceful ones. The ones that go out and do craziness, they're not really anarchists because they are aggressive, and all of us adhere to a strict ethical principle called the non-aggression principle.
So, with that said, as we delve into the topic of self-ownership, Eliza, I want to talk to you about kind of your journey to this point, because where we want to, I give everybody a little roadmap of where we want to go with this. I want to give a little background for our audience, especially for how you got here and what you've been doing and what you have planned. But then also, you and I talked about, we want to find out how in the current paradigm we can continue to improve the situation for victims and survivors, and also what it would look like trying to accomplish those things in a stateless society as well. Because that's where we see the optimums, when no one is exerting their will through coercion, fraud, or force on anyone else. So what I want to start off with, though, is a little background into. I know you have to tell your story a lot. You've been interviewed in magazines and on podcasts and things like that. If you don't mind, a little bit of background about how you came to that very rough period of your life where you had to escape, and you were kind of in a place a lot of people find themselves in, where you didn't know where to go next and whether it was worth even trying.
Well, first of all, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. And I love the opportunity to speak to folks with a different platform than my own. I firmly feel like the more that we get the message out there to diverse populations, the better chance we have at saving more lives or giving more people the opportunity to be free. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, my journey. And by the way, I don't mind speaking about it, because if one survivor sees it and decides to step forward as a result of hearing my story, it's a job well served. So I don't care how many times a day I have to tell my own story. We're good. But yeah, I was groomed at age 15. I went to the Vans Warped Tour, and I met a photographer there. And that photographer offered me a bogus modeling deal in Los Angeles. And I was actually sex trafficked at age 17. So they groomed me for that entire time. I was sex trafficked at age 17, and I was sold for $500 to someone in Los Angeles. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to be free relatively soon after that. Unfortunately, much like most survivors, because that initial trauma was there already, I decided to go back to the lifestyle later on in life. Leaving the second time was more difficult. So I always let folks know that when we talk about human trafficking, we're talking about force, fraud, or coercion. Definitely the second time, I had severe trauma bonds, or we like to call it Stockholm syndrome. So I had severe trauma bonds and Stockholm syndrome with my former abusers. So that's sort of what it looked like for me in a nutshell. As far as reaching out for help, I saw a survivor talking about her story on YouTube. And actually, it's pretty cool. We had a chance to sit down today for a podcast, which is really incredible. Yeah, I talk about America, like that's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Full circle moment. But
right.
Sorry. But yeah, I saw a survivor on YouTube. She was talking about her experience, and shortly after I saw her talking about her experience, she started putting words to my story that it struck a chord with me. And soon after that, I reached out for help. I contacted an organization in Chicago, and they gave me an advocate, and then I went to a safe house a couple states away in the middle of the night.
Wow.
Where in Chicago?
Yeah, so my story in Chicago is pretty interesting. I lived in Chicago for 8.5 years total. I lived, at that time when I decided to leave, I was on the west side of Chicago, but I also lived on the south side as well. And in the Gold Coast. I lived all over
that's where
Chicago.
Nico's in Chicago.
I'm on the south side right now. Yeah.
What part of the south side?
Beverly. So, yeah.
It's not the worst. Beverly's not the worst.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Beverly's not the worst.
No. But if you go a little bit past the hundreds and you go to the low ends, it gets kind of, that's where it starts to get a little fun, if you will.
Yeah, it was wild for me. Like living in Chicago, that was an interesting experience. I learned so much living in Chicago. I love Chicago. Right now, I'm not that far from Chicago myself. I love Chicago so much. But at the time when I was there, I'm sure very similar to how it is now. It was very dangerous. So
yeah, a lot hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
The
west side wasn't much better than the south side. It was rough.
Yeah.
So I've got it all easy here in Indiana. The only thing I got to worry about is some chickens. So I like Chad. I've fallen in love with your balls to stand up to these right to these. Okay, this is who I am.
Yeah, welcome to Marcus World.
Right,
This is it.
right. And I love the way that you fearlessly stand and tell people that this has to end. It reminds me a lot of several of our friends, including Adam House, Adam Kokesh, many of the activists that Chad and I kind of have run with in the past. And but in particular, this issue is like the core of what is wrong with society. Because just so people know, this is slavery. Whether you're talking about sexual slavery or monetary slavery, whatever it is, it's slavery. For these people that think that's over and done with, back when we fought the Civil War, they have another thing coming. It's alive and well, and it happens in this country. So would you tell us why, what motivates you to not only to buck the system, but to stand firmly? And, I've watched I've read the articles that Chad has listed below, and I watched your interview with Hotep Jesus, who is an amazing human being, and that was a great interview. But I'd like our audience to hear what part of your heart is it that makes you want to fight for the freedom of other people?
Well, thank you for your passion. I love that. I love that spirit. In short, grateful to be alive. That's the truth. When I look at the data and I look at the statistics, none of that is in my favor.
Yeah.
The United Nations has called this the hidden crime. 0.04% of survivors are ever identified. So looking at a number, generally speaking, rough estimates are like 403 million trapped in modern day slavery. That's including, forced labor and forced sex, the sale of black market human organs and things of that nature. But I'm just grateful. It's pure gratitude. And I also feel that I want to repay back the favor that was freely given to me. I want to pay it forward. I had an advocate there. When I reached out to that organization, there was someone there to answer the email. There was someone there to come move me out of the west side of Chicago in the middle of the night, which was not NDP. I mean, it's the least I could do. I'm grateful for my life. So that's what it is. The passion, the fire is pure gratitude.
Nice.
Yeah, that's kind of a natural thing anytime you have that sort of situation where you get that kind of help that that you couldn't have done it without. I don't think anybody knows this about me. Maybe Marcus knows this about me, but my parents, when I was a senior in college, split up and were separated for like 9 months. And in the summer after I graduated from college, I walked my mom down the aisle and handed her back to my dad. And one of the reasons why they got back together was this ministry that then they took the next 30 years to just be, well, maybe not 30 years. I'm not that old. But anyway, like for 20, 25 years, however long it's been, they've been very, very active in that ministry because of that same reason. Like you can't not want to give that back to other people once you see what it does to inside your soul and for your ability to feel free yourself. You can't. It's infectious.
I want to add real quick so that we can put this into perspective. You said over 400 million people worldwide, right?
40.3 million.
40 million.
40 million. So that's 10%, more or less, of the American population, just to put that into a round number. So 1 of every 10 Americans, if you were to do the math, would be enslaved.
Yeah, well, I mean, we see, so when we talk about numbers that big, we're talking about quite a few folks in India, and other countries, it is a massive, massive problem. Fortunately, in the United States, we probably have one of the smallest problems, but it doesn't mean that it's any less. And so I do try to speak to human trafficking both in the United States and around the world. I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had. One thing I'm grateful for is that the conversation of forced labor, labor trafficking is becoming more prevalent. And that is one thing I'm really grateful for. I'm probably not the best person to speak to that because I don't necessarily understand the T visas and things like that, but I still definitely do try to speak to that as well.
Yeah, and it's slavery either way, whether they're trafficking in sex or they're trafficking in labor. It's still slavery. Me personally, I believe that if someone chooses to sell their body or sexual favors, that's on them. They can do whatever the heck they want to do. It's their money. They can take it, do whatever. You go enslaving somebody and forcing somebody to do that, a whole different ballgame.
And one of the things that really, of course, gets under my skin is when we start talking about children. So a big thing that we see in rural areas and in urban areas as well is people selling their own children. This is very common, and it's.
Is it really? When I heard you tell that story, I was astonished. Like I can imagine there are some sick people, but I didn't think it was that common. And the way you talk about it, it seems like it's way more common than I would have ever imagined. People selling their own children or whatever, that, pimping them out or whatever it is for different reasons.
Yeah, familial trafficking is on the rise. It is high. I always tell people like this, a lot of it has to do with drugs. If we want to keep it all the way real, a lot of it has to do with drugs and a lack of money, especially the COVID-19 lockdown has increased. Folks being at home and they can't work. I mean, listen, this is a reality, and it sucks because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to look at it for what it is. It really sucks. It sucks that I have to talk about it all day. I don't want to talk about it all day. Nobody wants to hear about it all day. But the fact is, it is what it is. So we literally have to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Seems like
it is what it is. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about it.
And so what do you encourage people to do? Like for me, I'm a doer, and for me, it's like, okay, how the hell do I get in this? And help out because like we have a friend named Tag we interviewed, and he helps with the homeless. So, I can help with the homeless. I can go out and run around and pass some food out and do all that kind of stuff. That's something I can do. How do we get there? How do we help? What can we do?
This is one of my favorite questions because it's one of the funnest. I don't know. It's one of my favorite to answer. I always let folks know that we need your time, talent, or treasure. So wherever you're already at, whatever you're already doing, do it for the movement. If you're on social media like you gentlemen have, your show and your podcast, you're already helping the movement by having me on. If you're on social, post about it. Post the hotline numbers. Post data and statistics, real data and real statistics for 2019. We don't quite have 2020 yet, but post the real data, post the real statistics, post the hotline number. And then the other thing is, well, folks can Google and see organizations that are in their area. Research the organization, make sure that they're legit, and then volunteer. Volunteer your time, talent, or treasure. And by time, talent, or treasure, I mean, if you're a carpenter, lend that skill to a survivor safe house. If you knit socks, send a box of knit socks to a survivor safe house. We need it all. If you make meals, if you're part of a faith-based group, see what you can do as a whole. If it's donating money, that's amazing as well. But not everybody can donate money in these times. So what you do is you take a skill that you already have, that you're already good at, and you lend it to the survivor space. I had a massage therapist hit me up a couple months ago, and she wanted to do massages for survivors. I said, whoa, that might be a bit much, but maybe you could do massage for the advocates that work there, and then get your advocate training, and then you could maybe do chair massage or something with clothes on for survivors. There are multiple ways that folks can get involved. Also, if somebody's a massage therapist or teaches yoga, you could raffle off. A lot of organizations are struggling. It's not just folks out here that are struggling, or organizations are struggling as a result of COVID-19 as well. You could see if you could raffle something off. Even if you offer to cut hair for survivors. We need it all. We need it all.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
and one of the things that I think absolutely we can do is, both all three of us are interconnected into our own personal communities here, and all three of us are spread out across the country. But we can absolutely look at, integrating and seeing and because in my own community, and I'm talking about the libertarian, anarchist community here in Indiana. I can try to bring these subjects to the forefront, because these are the things that people like the Libertarian Party should be talking about. They should be, because this is modern day slavery. If there is anything that we stand against, it's this.
Right.
100%. I think that if anybody should be behind freedom, it should be folks that talk about liberty. And there's other things as well. We do need men. We need men. I'm talking to three gentlemen. We need men, because men and boys are trafficked as well. As we know, data and statistics, there are some organizations that have up to 23% of their survivors are men and boys. So we need men, and we need men to come around, be mentors, and help survivors as well. Now, I always recommend that somebody get their advocacy training in their state before being with survivors. It's not something we take very lightly. Also, I always recommend doing a background check. Just make sure that we don't have any pedophiles trying to, get through the mix. But there are lots of ways. But so I think that this probably goes to the broader conversation tonight, is that I firmly believe that we should not be waiting on the government to solve this issue for us. I would like the government involved in this issue as little as possible. I've seen what the government's done to the domestic violence space, and it's been absolutely a nightmare. And we mirror quite a bit with the domestic violence space. So this comes back to more, I think, where you gentlemen probably would agree with, is that I want the government not involved as much as possible, and to keep their grimy little hands out of it. And we need more private charity, and guys like yourself stepping into the survivor space and saying okay, what can we do?
Right, and you're right. And I'm an anarch, so I got to point it out that when you bring the government in, because adding violence and theft always makes things better. Because that's what the government does.
He's being sarcastic, everybody. He's being sarcastic.
Right. That's what the government does. They are not here to help you. And at the end of the day, you can say, "Oh, but they gave me food stamps, or they did this, or they did that." Okay, they did that one by stealing from somebody else
or maybe even stealing from you through inflation and everything else. They're stealing from all of us. So it's
right. And so they've stolen it to begin with. And the second thing they do is they're only doing that so that they can, if you go to a church and ask for help, generally they hand you some bread, some cheese, here you go on about your business. Your government, you're going to fill about 20 pages of documents out that are going to ask you about your kidneys, your brother, your sister, and everything else, because they don't actually want to help you. They want to appear like they're helping you so that people don't rebel. So you're right. We've got to deal with this ourselves. This is an issue. And whether you're talking about children, I have 4 kids of my own, and I'm not a violent person. Talked about it when we started this podcast, that I don't believe in violence. You go molesting one of my kids, ooh, I also have guns. And that's going to be a bad day. So
the initiation force and then the defense of the helpless and defense of yourself is those are 2 different things. So Daryl had a question. Shout out to our truckers in the community out there. He wanted us to ask. I'm going to go on a limb and say you probably are aware of this, but just in case, that is she aware of Truckers Against Trafficking? All CDL drivers have to watch a video and get training regarding it.
I am aware of Truckers Against Trafficking. They've done a lot of great things for the movement. I have some qualms about their latest campaign. I think it's kind of corny, but hey, whatever gets the word out, so be it. And yes, shout out to the truckers. Truckers have done an amazing job at raising awareness and really actually being at some of the forefront of making sure that this isn't happening within their own community. I'd love to see what's happened in the trucker community happen in other communities around the United States and around the world. That would be awesome. So yes, shout out to the truckers. I love you.
With the truckers out there, do you have are there certain protocols that like a civilian would have to take if they see something going on or anything along the lines of some kind of trafficking, or if they think it's trafficking?
So if you think you see human trafficking, it depends on the situation, right? Every situation is very different. And for that victim or survivor, it could be a matter of life or death. So you always have to remember that when you're speaking to victim or survivor of human trafficking, it could be a matter of life or death. And they also might not be ready to leave their pimp or abuser. Like I said, Stockholm Syndrome's real, right? So I always recommend if somebody's in an emergency, they have to call 911. I'm sure you guys probably would have something to say about that. But facts are facts. Look.
No, we're in the paradigm we're in. Yeah.
Be out here acting vigilante. Like we could talk tonight about ideas, but at the end of the day, vigilante behavior is not condoned, right? So we have to stick to the rules as they are right now. So I'd always recommend calling 911. If you cannot call 911, or if it's not in the best interest of the victim, survivor, or yourself, you can always reach out to the human trafficking hotline. It's a national human trafficking hotline that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unfortunately, they get so many calls and have had so many calls that it will be a kind of a long wait when you call the human trafficking hotline. You want to talk about a nightmare.
Yeah, and probably the reason for that is they're running it likely out of some kind of government funding. Do you know? And the problem is that unfortunately, it takes private business being interested. And, instead of, handing it off to the government, maybe as part of some company in your city, as part of their give back to the community, they could fund the ability to do that. As an example, I can't name the name, but the company that I work for has an entire call for of people that their job is to answer the phone and to dial out. What they could do is they could, as a charitable giving to be shown as being part of their community, they could donate, say, 5 people a day, and out of thousands of employees, they could donate 5 people to handle their local city, and as part of what they do, and answer the phone and have training and have all of that stuff. It would be easily done. And, like Chad said, I don't believe in the state and I don't believe in any of that, but anything that gets us there is better. And how I see that is what you do is you offer them tax breaks. If you are working in a statist paradigm, you're working in a where you still have a government, you give those corporations or those companies a tax write-off to do that. And you don't get the government involved other than that. Now, my personal opinion is it would be better just handled by a corporation given a crap. And for all these people that hate major businesses, there are businesses that actually care. These places are people by people, and I care, and I work for a corporation. So, at the end of the day, they should be able to do this voluntarily on their own. But you have to take because unfortunately, I'm guessing, and you know more about this than I do, but I would guess that there are all these regulations stopping somebody from just saying, hey, let's get 5 of our guys on the phone every day and deal with this. No, they've got to jump through 4,000 hoops to get there, and makes it completely 20 times more expensive for them to actually do it. Do you find that to be the truth?
Well, just really quickly, I just want to say one more thing just to double back. Also, if you think you see a survivor, I'm so sorry. I hate to go back like this. But
No. You do your thing.
If you think you see a survivor of human trafficking, it's best to try to get them alone somehow. So if it's somebody that, you could maybe catch them in the bathroom, maybe slip them a note. See, actually, we've seen a lot of great stories in the past few years of flight attendants doing this. And we have some other things we do kind of like on the DL in emergency rooms that I'm not really at liberty to talk about right now, just because I don't want to give it up. But we got things we do. But just getting the survivor alone or the potential survivor alone and just simply asking, do you need help? That's the number one way. As far as the human trafficking hotline goes or anything like that for reaching out for help, I think about this all the time. I don't even have the guts I don't think I would be able to mentally handle answering phones at the human trafficking hotline. It takes a very specific, special
not
type
for
of
everybody.
person.
Yeah.
No, it's not for everyone. It would be extremely traumatizing and very heartbreaking on a level, because you are dealing with folks in the most extreme situation of their life, trying to get out and trying to reach for help. Even as an advocate, I've experienced things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So yeah, it seems like that'd be awesome if you could just volunteer. It ain't that type of thing. It is not that type of thing. It would make a grown man cry, to be brutally honest, just even hearing some of the stories. So there is some preparation that I would recommend in anticipation for answering something like that. Like if you're going to answer the phones for the suicide lifeline or the domestic violence hotline, you wouldn't want to go into that lightly. You want to be adequately trained so you know what to say and you know what to do. And it's life or death. I mean, we're literally talking about life or death.
For sure. And like you said, it takes a special person, but those special people exist. And
they do.
And I'm not saying, because I get too mad. I'd be the one raging and the breaking shit in the office. I can't believe I did that. But that's me. But for sure, and for me, the key would be finding those people, working with churches, and keep in mind, I practice voodoo, so I'm not trying to jump into church myself, but at the end of the day, that's where the people are that are out there doing that. They're the ones that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. So a few little things about what you were talking about, because I remember back in December when we initially were talking about doing this, and you raised a few questions for me, Eliza. One of the things that we were talking about that I guess it wasn't hard for me to imagine it. I had probably considered the idea before, but it really hit me and sunk in that you talked about. There are some times where the person is in a situation because either their family's compromised or something like that, especially if they're from out of the country or anything like that, or in any kind of situation like that, where they're actually instances where it's really, really delicate, and it's not just something as simple as grab and help them, get them away out of the situation, because it could end up causing harm to their family or anything like that. So it definitely needs to be treated with care. There's a whole lot more. So if you want to speak to that, the complexity of some of these situations, I want to give you that forum.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex situation. So in certain instances, and some of the best examples I like to give are with illicit massage parlors. We never know necessarily who's inside and where they're from. So unfortunately, the way that these trafficking organizations work, because they're so they're really good. They're really, really good. And they will take the victim or survivor's papers or any type of papers that they have, and they'll know that victim's entire bloodline back home. So basically, if that victim flips on her abusers or flips on the traffickers and starts talking to police. And the other thing too, you also have to think, this victim might not even know what country they're in. They might not know what state they're in. they might not know anything, and you also don't know what the trafficker has put in their head. You know, at this point, the poor survivor's probably traumatized and put in a whole headspace that we don't have any idea about. But basically, what that looks like in real life is that if that victim or survivor speaks out against their abuser, their entire bloodline back home in their community will be wiped out, to set an example that this is what you don't do when we traffic you, essentially. So those are some of the things that I try to think about when we talk about doing raids and things like that, is that there is a possibility that the survivors don't want to be free. Now, when we talk about minors, there is no choice involved. The minor, under no circumstances, should be in that situation, and they lack the ability to consent to being in any of those situations. But when it comes to adults, we have to tread very lightly because we literally don't know the circumstance.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's funny. It reminds me. It reminds me of like gangster movies. You know, the way you talk about it. It reminds me of like, you know, Tony Soprano, and he's going to bring down the. And then, unfortunately, what that does, because in my brain, automatically, everything that's evil in the world is the government, and I go, well, you know, the best, you know, gangsters out there are the government. And unfortunately, what I see is that you know, people talk about that you know, what would we do without the police, or what would we do without, you know, government being able to do this or that. Well, they wouldn't be enabling these ass clowns to do this shit. Because at the end of the day, if there were a bunch of people being trafficked, and there may be, and I'm not aware of it, but if there were a bunch of people in my town, and I do live in a town, I don't live out in the country. If someone in my town were trafficking girls or trafficking anyone, children, whatever it is, me and my friends are going to get together and go pay them a visit, and we're going to have a little conversation. And instead of the town cop coming in and giving us shit because we're causing a nuisance with this business, maybe that cop would say, wait a minute, my job is to protect my community, and these girls are in my community, instead of stigmatizing them and saying, oh, this is just a whore, why do I care about all that, I'm going to throw them into the jail later. How about they try to think about the individual that they're talking to, and that they're going through some trouble, and why don't we collectively, as a group, as a community, come down on that and make that happen? The problem is, because again, we get roadblocks after roadblocks after roadblocks that the government puts in our way, because you can't go knock on their door. They can shoot you if you do. And if you do knock on their door and you're armed, you're in trouble. You know, we need to stop pandering to evil people. At the end of the day, you know, I'm not in any way I'm not in any way advocating for violence, but, and I know it may sound like it because I'm like, you know, but this really pisses me off, because, you know, we have good-hearted people in every community. And I believe part of what makes me, you know, have the ethical foundation that I do have is because I believe in people, and I believe that the majority of people are good and that they want to help. And it seems to me that what we need to do is get the impediments out. Nobody wants to be sold for sex. That doesn't, nobody goes, what am I going to do when I grow up? I thought I'd be sold for sex. You know, that doesn't happen. You know, what happens is that they find themselves in a circumstance where they are helpless, and someone comes along, and this is what I've gathered, someone comes along to help, and then it screws their whole life over. And then they get addicted to whatever it is they're addicted to. And so what do you, okay, so from that perspective, what, you know, outside of it, because we can't trust the police to help, we can't trust, you know, and we have all of these roadblocks. what do we do when in the moment we see something other than, like you said earlier, saying, okay, I can help you? What do we do? What can we do?
You have to know what's up with your local organizations. That's the truth. And you have to research your local organizations. But I think the truth is that it looks different depending on where you are. I would encourage anyone, no matter where they are watching this, to Google or search engine of your choice. Google the latest arrest. Google your town and human trafficking. See what pops up. The town near you, see what pops up. You know, we were talking earlier about Chicago. In Chicago, it looks much different than it would in our rural areas. But it is what it is. You know, so as far as helping folks and as far as what you're talking about, it goes all the way down to all the way to the top. I don't trust anybody. That's the truth. I rock with survivors. I rock with other survivors. Every now and then I'll do collaborations with organizations, but generally speaking, I only work with survivors.
So can I ask you a little question?
I don't trust anyone. Anyone.
Right.
We don't trust anyone. Period. Because it's all the way to the top. It goes all the way to the top. Look at these big arrests that we just had. Peter Nygaard. We've had folks that have been affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein, going all the way up to the top. You know, we also know that not everything has come out about every situation. They're just getting going on these high-profile busts. You know, the police sometimes. And the other truth is that I know what you're saying. There's a lot of good-hearted people out there, but we have to look at the reality. The reality is that if there wasn't demand, there's a lot of people out there that want to have sex with no strings attached and can care less, or labor with no strings attached. Let's also say that. There's a lot of folks out there that are willing to participate in this. So yeah, there's a lot of amazing people out there, but there's a lot of trash people out there too. There's a lot of folks that are just willing to buy whatever to have their quick moment of fun and are not thinking about the expense on the other end. They don't care.
Right.
They don't care. They're not seeing humans as humans. Right now, let's in good faith, let's assume all of us sitting here now, we all see humans as humans. We're talking about two different things. These people do not see humans as humans. They see them as black market, you know, guns, illicit guns, you know, black market oil, and the sell of drugs. They're seen as a product. Period. So we're not talking,
or as a currency.
We're not dealing with a regular. Yeah. It's not the same. I would love to see all the people that really care about this to step forward. I feel like this is a topic that intimidates people so much. They're terrified to talk about it. But you know, someone tweeted at me today about, I forget exactly what the tweet was, but it was almost about like implying that it was all the swamp and the elites that are involved in trafficking. And, you know, we have to keep our own actions above reproach. Right now, I'm streaming live on an Apple iPhone. You know, modern day slaves made my phone. So let's call a spade a spade. It goes all the way up to the top. It's our products. It's everything. If you're wearing a pair of Nike shoes, guess who made those shoes? But there's no accountability. Nobody's talking about it, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, hang on. Let me go.
Am I cracking up a lot?
No, you're good. Go ahead, man.
I haven't told any jokes, so you're probably not cracking up yet. Probably because we haven't talked about Twitter a lot. I let like real crazy out.
Yeah, right. We'll get there.
It's all good. Every time, like, I'm actually very, very bad with phones, and it hurts because it's like I have a new like thought process on like how to view a phone. It's somebody's life, like, and I just treat it like shit. Like, I just treat an iPhone like shit, and I don't take into like the consideration. I just treat material things as material things and never give it too much thought to it. But you have to take the thought into it when you think about how things are conceived or how things are. See the sacrifice, like when it comes to food, or the sacrifice people take to build buildings, the sacrifice. So I see my phone in a whole different light. Even though I drop it and I'm clumsy, that's just my nature. I most definitely try to take as best care as I can, because I actually see it as a human life. Like, I see it as more than just being a phone. People sacrifice a lot of things for our luxuries, and people don't open their eyes to it.
I mean, I would love to get it to a place in this country where I'd be willing to pay more for my products, my fruit, my anything, just to guarantee the fact that it wasn't made with slave labor. And, I mean, it's wild how many things are made that way using slave labor or child labor, even worse. So I would pay more. I would definitely pay more. And I feel like there's no accountability through the chain. There has been a little bit recently with some oils and things of that nature. But I mean, really, we're just barely scratching the surface when it comes to the slave labor conversation. Once again, nobody's trying to have the conversation. It's too difficult for people to fathom. And I just wish people would get over themselves and wake up to it. That's what I really wish. That's what I really wish.
And I think that one of the things to address that a little bit, Milton Friedman talked about in Free to Choose. He talked about that we like to think that we're taking apples to apples comparisons between, for instance, the economy in China using slave labor and the slave labor here in the United States. That's not actually true, and because the market manipulation that both the United States government and the Chinese government do, actually, what I would argue is that if we actually had a free market on phones and we actually let competing phone companies really compete without government interference, it wouldn't send the prices up. You'd have American-made products. Because who believes that it's cheaper to get a bunch of shit from China and send it overseas that we go back and forth across the water 3 or 4 times? Mm-hmm. That's bullshit. The end of the day, the free market would supply it. Somebody in Milwaukee would be making your phone, and they'd be doing it as cheap as they could if they had a free market. And I want to tie that back in to
not only that, but the taxation and the inflation and everything. Right. Also, like, makes it to where now you have to go to some of these other places to be able to afford to get the shit for your expenses to be down.
Right, and I want to tie this back into the conversation we're having with you. In that, there is a similarity between the drug war and the slave enslavement. I'm going to call it slavery because that's what it is. There is a similarity between those. And part of that is the reason that, for instance, it used to be you paid a shit ton of money to go get some weed. And now you can go to the corner store and get 10 different varieties is because they made it legal. And when you start making things legal, you start having self-regulation. I live in Indiana, and you can't get regular pot. You can get CBD, and you can get 10,000 different versions of CBD, and you can walk in, I want that one, and that one. And I think with sex trade and those kinds of things, if we were to make it a free market, and if somebody wants to sell themselves, they can themselves. They make those choices. If we take the government trying to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body out of whether you're talking drugs, you're talking vaccines, you're talking slavery, you're talking sex, whatever it is not the government's business what the fuck I do with my life. And if the quicker we can get them out of our business, the quicker we have people that say, okay, I want to have sex for a living. And that's what they decide to do on their own terms. And now they have to turn to a pimp, or they have to turn to all of these, negative people who do not have their best interest in mind. I think that we have a similar comparison between the drug trade and the slave trade. Would you agree?
100%. I always tell people we lost the war on drugs. It was a total nightmare, waste of money, loss of life. There's got to be a better way. And I see human trafficking and modern day slavery almost neck and neck mirroring the war on drugs. We are attacking it the same way. I would borderline say we're attacking it in a tragic way with less energy than we were with the war on drugs. It's just, right. It's just, we're not doing it the right way. It's corny. We're not meeting survivors where they're at. It's like, it's all off. Does that make sense? It's just all off. Yeah. I'm grateful that folks are talking about it and that we're paying attention. And by the way, I don't ever offer criticism unless I have something to put in its place. So I always have a lot of suggestions and solutions. But yeah, we're just not doing it the right way. Now, the only thing I will say, just to double back, is it does put us in a weird position. So when we talk about legalization of things of that nature, my only request is that we just deal with human trafficking first, child sexual abuse material, child sexual abuse, human trafficking, before we go ahead and make any huge movements in the sex work community. And I tell you that only because in countries that are very homogenous, where they've already tried this, it has not worked out well for human trafficking. In fact, we've only seen it increase. I'm open to these conversations. I love these conversations. And I always let folks know I have no opinion on what willing adults do behind closed doors, right? I mean, these are willing adults. I honestly have no opinion. Like, whatever weird stuff whatever you want to do, none of my business.
Right.
My thing is if
consent.
It's non-consensual,
right?
Or if there's children involved. So, but I
because children can't consent to that shit. They can't. They're not capable of. There's too much power dynamic manipulation and too much trust dynamic manipulation as well. And it's not fair to assume that a child can consent to something that they have no idea what it even means or what they're doing or anything.
No.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Let her finish.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I just always say, I mean, there's no circumstance in which a child can consent to selling sex to an adult. Under all circumstances and by the United States law, if a child is selling sex or involved in prostitution, it is 100% a human trafficking victim 100% of the time. And that includes images and videos as well.
Okay.
What I was going to say is, to me, what I would do, let's say, I get what I want and I get what I want. And we have a voluntary.
I thought you meant you know what you want about sex. All right. So you're talking about with the voluntary.
Do you?
Right.
Do you?
I do.
Look, this man. Yeah, we won't go there, but yeah, it's had a storied life here.
I do. I've had a good life, but let's say I get what I want.
All consensual. From what I understand.
Right. So I get what I want. We have a voluntarist Indiana. Indiana, secedes from the Union, and we become a voluntarist country. Woo! Okay, we got it. You know what the first thing I do? I go, Eliza, I need some help here. Now, we got a bunch of communities here in Indiana. We don't know what the fuck we're doing with this whole sex trade thing. What do we do? What I do is I reach out to experts. I reach out to the people that know what they're talking about, that have lived it, that have been there. And it seems to me that that's the way that we solve a lot of these problems, is start listening to people like you, is to start listening to people that know what the hell is going on and where that would go. My solution is, okay, I think that we would be better with a free market. I think we would be better with legalizing sex work and all of that. But I don't know everything. I know that's crazy that someone actually on their own show would admit that they don't know everything, but I don't. And what I would do is reach out to people like yourself. I wouldn't hire some bureaucrat that boned my sister last week and paid me $1 million, which is typically what government does. I would not hire them to cover human trafficking. I wouldn't do it. I would reach out to the experts. And so what I think we need to do as a community, whether we're talking about the voluntarist anarchist community or we're talking about the community of people, of victims like yourself and people that have gone through this themselves, whichever community we're talking about, is we need to start coming together. We need to start bringing ourselves and saying, okay, listen, I don't think that slavery's good. You don't think that slavery's good. I think we're going to agree on more things than we're not going to agree on. Put the shit that we're going to disagree about aside and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we move forward with it. And if somebody comes to me and says, well, what do you think about sex trafficking? I'm not going to say, well, my opinion is, I'm going to say, why don't you check out Eliza Bleu? She knows what she's talking about. And so I think what I would like to do is to encourage the people within our community to start reaching out to the people in your community, to start saying, I'm here. Most voluntarists, it's in the name, are volunteering to do shit, and so if you're an activist, if you're somebody who cares about these issues, if you're opposed to slavery, like you're supposed to be as a good anarchist, reach out to these people in your community all over this country, or hell, we got listeners in Australia. They can do it too, because this is a problem we have got to solve.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. One of the things is that we always get into the conversation of sex work and human trafficking and sex work and human trafficking. And a lot of times, actually, sex workers have a big problem with the type of stuff that I do. They think that we're actively working against it. It actually couldn't be any more the opposite. If anything, if we can completely eradicate sex trafficking, it will actually boost business for them. It'll give them a safer, cleaner environment to work in. If anyone should want human trafficking and sex trafficking removed, it should be folks that already work in that industry. See, the difference is that if you're a sex worker and if you have a standard that you abide by, like you always use protection or something like that, if a victim has a trafficker that has a quota for you, you have to meet by the end of the night, that victim will do more for less and undercut you every single time. And also, I always like to let the sex worker community know,
because they have to produce for
You have a quota. You have a quota. If you
you have a quota.
You're dead or you get
damn.
beat up.
Yeah.
You're dead or you get beat up. Also, I also like to remind the sex worker community that if someone's into children, they're probably not also into willing adult sex workers as well. So we're talking about two different things. And if anyone should want it gone, it should be the willing adult sex worker community. Unfortunately, it's very rare that they reach out to help, but I'm always open and willing to have those conversations because I feel that they need to be had. I have no beef with the sex worker community. If anything, I love them so much. And I try to reach out to them as much as possible because I truly feel that when you're in that space, you have probably more access to survivors than I do. And my big thing is meet people where they're at. So I want to meet survivors where they're at, and they might know something that I don't know, word on the street, whatever, or they might themselves find themselves in a situation that they can't get out of. So I always try to reach out to them. I'm just not like welcome there, but I'll keep trying. But I think it would be really interesting just to hear from you guys how you would say, okay, in complete anarchist society, how enforcement would look like, how that law enforcement would tackle or whatever type of private security would tackle this issue, how they would talk amongst each other, because it is a crime that isn't just state, it's everywhere. It's literally like everywhere, all around the world. So how would that look in your perfect world, or what your perfect idea of government, what lack of government would look like? What would that look like? Like, I have no idea, and I would love to know because I think there's probably some good ideas in there. Does that make sense?
So can I just I don't believe in like utopias or like that it's a perfect world. I think it would definitely still be a very imperfect world because like the nature is trying to kill us every day. Like there's animals and all kinds of other like the world is not necessarily a safe place for humans. We have to fight for survival all the time, and so by no means I think it's just going to be like, we're all going to be farting rainbows and riding unicorns and all this other kind of stuff just because there's no government. Like we still have a lot of work to do to own ourselves and be responsible for the life that we build for ourselves. What I will say though is that I think a lot of if you look at what's actually done, so we always get into this thing about good cops, bad cops, good people in government, bad people in government, and all that kind of stuff. And there are definitely good people, good social workers and things like that. There are good cops who actually help people and stuff like that. I think a lot of times there's some weird stuff where like they defend each other too much, even the bad ones. But what you would see is the people who are in it for the right reasons would be very willing and would be part of an active private security force or private investigative force to try to help it and track down some of this stuff. And so you would be in a much better situation if the incentive was coming from trying to actively help the community that you're serving as customers instead of coming to the situation as though you own the community and you rule over the community. And typically what they're doing is they are enforcing laws to protect the state, which in a lot of cases is in cahoots with some of the bad actors in these situations. And so then you end up actually like making the situation even worse. And so what I would much rather see is a type of private security firm or private investigative firm that is customer focused. And the customers would be, I can't find my child. Can you help me find my child? Instead of, yeah, we'll put it on the stack of reports and we'll get to it whenever we get to it. And I know I don't want to be flippant about it and pretend like they don't give a shit completely, because I know there are a lot of people who've been rescued and things like that. But let's face it, like a lot of this stuff gets caught up in bureaucratic bullshit and never gets addressed the way that it should be. How many rape kits are we still waiting to have investigated? Like to be real about this shit. Like if this was customer based, if you had to get paid for the service that you're providing as a rape investigator, if you had to actually process those rape kits, they wouldn't be sitting there fucking 30 years later. So that's my little 2 cents. I don't know if Nico or Marcus kind of has a thing to add on to that.
It'd be interesting to like try and figure out. It'd be something along the line of what Chad would say or said, and the fact of you need a private security force, because just like if we go further back into the conversation, you said things can get co-opted easily, and one thing that we wouldn't want is like a massive community where they try and help, but he gets co-opted and things become a lot easier. That's just the shining example of the government. The government most definitely has been co-opted. So you would need to find a way for it to be a community basis so information can get passed fast, but it has to be very secure, as well as it.
Well, you'd have multiple firms too, and so they'd compete. So you wouldn't have right now with the police. You only have one, and they can get corrupted, and then that's all you have to do: corrupt that one, and job done. Just keep them on the dole. So, anyway, finish your point, Nico. I'm sorry.
I mean, it would be along the lines of what you said. It's just in my thought process, it'd be just the matter of security. I mean, everything can be secured, but everything can be hacked. I mean, there's too many possibilities.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So like trying to find out how to properly navigate through those loopholes kind of has me at a loss. But it's just the best bet would be you start in community, something your community would start off with, like a neighborhood watch, but that's something more in depth. People who actually know the neighbors, people who know who's inside the restaurants, who knows who's inside the grocery stores. And you start just basically by community, and somebody who knows, that's little Timmy, he stays over there, he's out until like 11 o'clock, but his people across the street watch him all the time. So as long as you would have something as in depth as the community knowing about it, and then it possibly flourishing and spreading the information, that'd be my best bet would be just community lockdowns and bases and things of that nature.
But
to be clear, let me go ahead and get to the to add to what these guys have said. There's a couple examples. First of all, Murray Rothbard covers this pretty extensively in Ethics of Liberty, where he talks about what a libertarian security would look like, and it generally is very similar to what Chad pointed out with the ideas of competing police forces and those kinds of things. But we actually do have in this particular place an example. And a lot of times we get a lot of slack because they're like, there's never been an anarchist community. Most of what we do exists in anarchy. You don't get up and fart because and have
you don't go next door and murder your neighbor, not because you are afraid that you're going to get arrested, but it's just because you're not an asshole who wants to look. So most of what we're doing is fairly anarchistic already. Like we're not, it's not like we get zapped every time we walk over to murder our neighbor because they're like, oh gosh, I forgot. I'm not supposed to murder my neighbor. Thanks for zapping me.
Right. but there is actually an example of a security force that is in existence that functions in a relatively anarchist society, and it's in Cherán, Mexico. You are not in Cherán, Mexico. You are not allowed to even talk about politics. You're not allowed to have a bumper sticker. You're not allowed to do anything to do with that. It is a relatively voluntarist society, and they have a security force. And that security force is hired by the community, and that community pays them based on how successful they are, and they do elections that the entire community, it's direct democracy, is involved in. To make a very short story, long story short, but those kinds of ideas, absolutely. A lot of people, it's like the roads. People think that we're going to get stumped up by how you build the roads. We don't get stumped up about that. And we also don't get stumped by the police. There are people who aren't bullies that would make good cops. And they just, in our current society, that's not what happens. The bully becomes the cop. And more often than not. And with it, when you incentivize doing a good job and helping the people in need with money, people want money. It's a weird thing. I want money,
I want money.
Right, money's good. So if you incentivize it using money and using maybe other mechanisms, it's not that difficult. But at the end of the day, the real answer, and Chad touched on it, Nico touched on it, and I'm about to touch on it. Adam Kokesh talks about it in his book, Freedom. And that is, it has to be local. The only way that you can get a truly anarchistic society is by getting it as local and to the people as possible. Because if you have this big, you're going to need some kind of organization. You're going to need people to come together voluntarily and do shit. The best size, I believe, for that is the county level. Get it small, get it functioning. That way, the people that are needing to deal with the sex trafficking issue aren't 4,000 miles away in another state. They're just down the road, and they're the people you go to. And maybe you have two different firms, but that's what you do. So hopefully that
and that's a lot of what ends up happening with a lot of this stuff anyway, right, Eliza? Like you end up having, if you found out that somebody got taken, you start kind of broadening that net, but you're still dealing with like local sheriffs and local, town or city, municipal police departments or mayor's offices or anything like that, where they might be able to find out what people have seen or anything like that. And then a lot of it too is like through like Amber Alerts or other things where people put out messaging and stuff like that on social media and everything. Hey, this person's missing. Here's a picture, those sorts of things. So we're doing a lot of this stuff without the government anyway. We're actually kind of carrying a lot of their load that they're supposed to be doing anyway. So I guess, I don't know. How did we do? Did we make a good case? Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty that I see is that could all be going on now and nobody cares.
Well,
So I would be in shock and awe if someone cared, and I also feel that pimps and pedophiles and predators would join the security force just to collect it. I'm not saying it's a horrible idea. Trust me, anything's basically better than what we have now. But I mean, people could do that now already. So, like in my specific case, and I hate to cherry pick, but law enforcement was never involved. I have, of course, done a couple of sexual assault kits, and I have been arrested a few times. But actually, your friend in here, I went to Cook County Jail for a little bit. So he knows Cook County Jail. You don't want to be there. But it's I think that folks could be doing it now. No one cares. No one cares. That's a truth. People don't care. Well, okay, let me back it up. People care. People care. I shouldn't say no one cares. It's difficult to get people to care or to even recognize it's a problem.
Right, because and the reason is because they say, but that's the cop's job.
Yeah,
and I agree with that.
They're expecting the government to do it. Yeah, there's a lot of that, and the same thing with charity. People have stopped. People have backed out a lot of private charity donations and volunteering and all that sort. Except for Thanksgiving and Christmas, when everybody feels guilty because they realize how much they have and how much other people don't have, and then they decide they feel guilty, and 1 day a year or 2 days a year they want to be charitable. A lot of private charity has been backed out because people just expect all this shit that they're paying in taxes to do something to help poor people or people who are being trafficked or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of that I think plays a role.
One thing that I think people don't realize. Oh, sorry.
What's that, Nico?
The lack of consistency that's also presented, as in I guess the marketing as well. If you're not always inside that pocket where somebody's always sharing information about somebody missing. And we live in an information age where we just get overran by data. Like it just puts on track shoes and just runs around us because we just, we got this. We got this. And everybody's running around with attention spans of squirrels. It doesn't help that we don't have some kind of community basis. I can't say for everybody else, but in my town, it would be great if there was people. Around the corner there was it's like going back to the neighborhood watch things or anything along the lines of that. It's being consistent with the information of things happening or people missing or things of that nature, opposed to leaving it to choice or chance social media. It scrolls across your page. I get to retweet this. That helps, but to what degree does it really help if you're not outside really pushing it to the person that's next to you? Because the person that's next to you will probably have a little bit more incentive to do it when they have that face-to-face conversation to you, opposed to just a retweet that you read, okay, and you scroll past it. And then the next thing you're worried about is some kind of ridiculous ass challenge that was just dropped yesterday. So it requires a lot more attention, not just on the people who are pushing it, but just overall platforms. And that's why you speak out on it on Twitter. Yeah, they do you dirty on Twitter. I most definitely I try to and retweet everything that you post out there so I can raise awareness to it. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a lot more effort on just the layman's man, the simple man.
I think one thing that people don't realize when we talk about the government, I'm talking about grant funding and how that breaks down. One thing I always like to point out to folks is that they don't fully understand how grant funding works. For one, it's really, really difficult to get. So even though the movement just had $135 million allocated to it from the government, which is, we need the money. So I'm happy about that money. Mm-hmm. But what people don't understand is that the way that grant funding breaks down is you can have a victim, a survivor that's sitting in front of you that needs a job, needs housing, needs diapers for her baby, needs something. And if your grant funding is allocated to buy chapstick for awareness or office furniture, you literally cannot use it to give that survivor a place to stay for that night.
Yeah, see, that's some bullshit. That's
That's
see,
supposed to be
I compare that.
You have to give a receipt for everything that you buy. You have to account for everything that you do. So, like, I have to send that victim back to her pimp because I had to buy office furniture. That's what I'm talking about when the government messes up everything. That's what it does. That's what it
Yeah,
does.
I compare that to like the sisters of or the missionaries of charity. Like I'm Catholic, and so we have, and I'm Catholic, and I'm also like I'm not down with all the fuckery that goes with the Vatican. So let me just put that preface out there. So I'll say this though: the missionaries of charity. There's a church downtown here in Baton Rouge where I mean they take in women who are either pregnant or who have small children or something like that, and they take care of them. They're so efficient with every dollar that goes to them. They wash and reuse styrofoam cups and plastic forks and spoons and stuff like that. They're not wasting any money, and everything is going to, if they need diapers, that money goes to diapers. If they need food, that money goes to food. It's none of this stuff is like, oh, well, sorry, this money is dedicated only to outreach or to marketing or whatever. There's none of that. Like there is no marketing. It's just people know like that's where, and they have like a little facility with like some apartments and stuff like that where they can keep these women out of an abusive situation or whatever the case may be if they can't afford somewhere, and they try to help get them back on their feet. So that's and that's where again I look at like for an example of how some of this stuff can be done. I look at people who are like pouring their heart and soul into the issues that they care about, and that's where I think a lot of the best energy comes from is from that sort of activity instead of just thinking that you voted once on a Tuesday in November and now your duty as a citizen is done. Everybody else can just go to the government if they need anything, and I'm going to go back to watching Netflix and play it on my PlayStation or whatever. And that's unfortunately that's where we've gotten to the point where people pull into their driveway, they close the garage door behind them, they don't talk to their neighbors, they don't, you know what I mean? So we need to get back to that community style of living where we actually get to know each other, we connect with each other instead of just expecting some magical faraway place to take care of everybody.
Step and build.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to kind of, yeah, go ahead. What you got? Because I want to kind of steer in one of the other directions we talked about, but I want to let you say what you were going to say first.
Well, I do want to add there are some communities, different faith-based communities, that do handle this problem from within their own community. So if there's a pedophile, a predator that pops up in certain, I don't want to actually, I'm going to be delicate with what I say, but in some specific faith-based communities, they do deal with it on their own, in their own community. I have asked members of the community, how come I don't see safe houses from this community popping up? It's generally speaking, if it's not a government-ran facility, it's more of, faith-based Christian facility. But we don't see a lot of the other faith-based communities stepping up with their own safe houses. And I've often asked members of those communities, why don't we see this? It's because they kind of deal with it on their own, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Within their own community, they deal with it on their own. They send somebody over and deal with it on their own, or if a survivor needs aftercare and if it happens in their own community. There's also a lot of countries that don't provide aftercare or any, the government's so corrupt in certain places that you literally can't reach out to the police. The police are involved as well, more than in the United States. You know what I mean? It's really bad in some countries. So they deal with it on their own.
Okay.
I want to real quick insert here, just for educational purposes. As much as we rail against government in its entirety, don't like it. To compare the United States to some of these piece of shit backwater countries like China, fuck China, those places, right. I don't care. Yeah, those
RIP channel eventually. No.
right. but those people.
Yo, don't drag my name into anything.
Listen. No.
Yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to go with the.
I Twitter like a
thread. I want to talk on the social media stuff here.
Right. So what I'm saying is that the United States has a lot of problems, and it continues to have more and more and more problems. But it ain't some of these countries. The bottom line is we're still not in, some of these African countries, India you mentioned, the list goes on and on. So I do need to say that.
I've tried to serve in other countries where the organizations are trafficking folks out of, and that's why I always say, please research organizations before you volunteer or donate. It's imperative. So, I mean, there are some survivors that I've spoken to that there's literally nothing I can offer them, but just support, and that's through Google Translate. That's how bad it is in some places in the world. So, although we do talk about America, I always try to keep a realistic perspective of the what I actually have here. I mean, the truth is, if something horrible happened right now, I could call the police. Somebody walked in the room right now. I mean, there are things that I can do here that I could not in other countries. In fact, in most countries, in some countries, I wouldn't even be able to have this conversation with three men.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we wouldn't be having this conversation on any platform.
Nor would I be allowed to have Twitter, because Twitter isn't allowed in some countries. So
right.
There is always that. Exactly. I'm glad you said that.
No, for sure. So where I wanted to go with this real quick. So we've talked a lot about when someone's in a situation and what we can do to try to help get out of it, or once they're out of it, how to help them with the aftercare. We touched on a little bit, but what we haven't really talked about that much is because I know it's one of the things that's important to you too, is how to help educate people and how to help people kind of see some of the things that they need to see before something like this happens, for prevention. And I want to propose something that we had kind of done with our kids when they were little. And I don't know if I want to see if this actually works, because I know that like strangers, it's not always strangers. It's the overwhelming majority of this is people that people know. And a lot of times it's people really, really close to them. And so this seemed like a good idea, but now looking at this, I'm like, God damn, man, this might not even be enough. But it was the Safe Side Super Chick. Shout out to the Safe Side Super Chick if she's still around. This is like 15 years ago or whatever. But what they talked about was the idea of stranger danger not being a very good thing to teach kids, because it's really confusing. Like, you could have your crazy perv uncle come to try to pick you up from school, and there might be a teacher from another grade that you've never seen before, but she's a teacher at your school. And so at that point, if stranger danger is all the kid knows, they don't go to the teacher who they don't know, because that's stranger. But the perv uncle who wants to pick them up, who's not supposed to be picking them up. I know the schools have done a lot to help with that situation, where they have like lists of who's supposed to be coming and all that kind of stuff. But what they recommended in this little video training thing for kids was that you have like 3 categories of people. You have your don't knows, people you don't know. It's obvious. Your kind of knows, which is people who they're part of. They might even be your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, somebody very close to the family or whatever. And then you have what are called your safe side adults, and that's your mom and dad. And I know that we have some situations where like parents are, horrible examples of this, where they've actually done this stuff to their kids. But by and large, most people, your parents, you can trust your parents. And then whoever your parents are like, look, this person is on the list of okay, like it's your grandmother or your grandfather, something like that. So that if somebody ever says, hey, do you want to go over here and look at my baseball card collection with me? You don't go, because that's one of the situations that you've talked about your kids with before, that if that's not one of your safe side adults, you don't go with them alone. you can only be with them when you're in the room with mommy and daddy, or whatever the case may be. What do you think about that? Is that or is there something maybe that we could expand on with something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Just generally speaking, just so we can talk numbers, there's really about 300 people that are kidnapped in the United States, roughly for the past couple of years.
See how low that number was.
It's
Yeah,
about 300. It's about 300 people that are kidnapped a year. But when you put that number next to the 800,000 missing children that go missing a year, now when you look at that big number at 800,000, you're talking about 1 in 6 are sex trafficked. So still, it's not. People think it's stranger danger. They think it's a white van. That's not what the data and statistics are showing us. It's showing us in the upper, like in the 90 percentile, folks that people know. Take my situation for example. I knew my abusers well before 2 years before I was sex trafficked. So this is something that we need to just get rid of now. We need to teach children, yes, to stay safe and to be mindful of strangers, but that hyper focus on that stranger danger white van, it just doesn't match up with what we see. It will be that slow grooming process. People acting like their children online, talking to your kids online. Right. That's a big problem that we see. If anything, that's worse. That we see much more. But I always encourage, I always encourage parents to speak to their children about this at a very young age. You adjust the language depending on the age. Now, granted, right now, a lot of children are in lockdown and they're doing school from home. But then you talk about internet safety. And you talk about it every single age, because there's a safe touch and there's an unsafe touch. And there's ways that you could talk to your children about that. Even children with special needs, you still definitely need to talk to your children with special needs, children that are on the spectrum. This is very, very important. They're at a higher risk for being abused because they can't necessarily articulate what's happening to them, don't have the language to put to it necessarily. So this is very, very important. And I always encourage parents, make sure that your children, teenagers and preteens, have someone in their life that's a safe person that they can talk to. Like I always call myself like the crazy aunt, that I hope that I can establish that relationship, but there has to be that other safe person that that's outside of the family. Let's be honest, if you're a 13-year-old girl and if a hot guy in Italy asks you for a picture of your boobs, and that who's 15, a hot guy in Italy asks you for a picture of your boobs, you're not going to go to your mom and be like, hey, this hot guy in. No, you're not going to talk to your mom about that. This is not a thing that happened. It's never happened. Like it's very rare. It's very rare that children or teenagers go to their parents and say something, because I think instinctually they know that it's a little bit naughty and they don't want to get in trouble. Having that open conversation, that open dialogue with your children, and say, look,
with a confidant or something. Yeah.
Education. If we can keep educating the youth, and once again, we have to meet the youth where they're at. We're having adult conversation right now, but when I talk to the youth, it's a totally different conversation. It's more fun. It's more real. I use, examples. It depends on the age, of course, but like depending on who I'm talking to, I'll talk to them in ways that they will understand. Right now, it's kind of like this would be like too uptight for them. You have to speak to the youth in ways that they understand. Use examples they understand. Like if they're on TikTok, explain what that would look like on TikTok.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, people are afraid, I think, a lot of times to have some of these discussions because they don't, it makes them nervous, it makes them uncomfortable. They know it makes the kids uncomfortable and everything. But goddamn, like it's way more important to keep your kids safe. It's way more important to keep your kids safe than to worry about being uncomfortable about a conversation.
Listen, they can be afraid of the conversation, but what they should really be afraid about is meeting me on the back end, because by the time you meet us as an advocate, it's too late.
Exactly. So now I'd like to pivot to, because this is kind of a big deal. You did something pretty bold the other day. Let's talk, because one of our supporters here, Big Paul, just came in. He said, I appreciate this guest. As a person who endured sexual abuse as a child and dealt with its repercussions late in life, I have a vengeance to help victims family friends violate. And that's true. That's exactly what we were just talking about. But he said he wanted to talk about pornography and that sort of stuff. So let's go right at it, because I know Nico really wanted to talk to you about the stuff with your work with Tesla. But before we get to that, let's talk about your battle with the man with the beard, and how you can have some of this stuff. We were talking about, learn to code got you banned. Some reporters said that coal miners who were losing their jobs because they were shutting down coal plants were, it was okay for them to learn to code. Maybe they can just learn to code, and then that's how they can have a job now at 65 years old with never using a computer or hardly using a computer at that point. So then when people, jokingly, poked that at some reporters, got these people banned from Twitter. However, we all know what is not banned on Twitter, at least not nearly on the level that it should be, because it is still way too accessible, way too easily accessible. And to Paul's point, porn is used to entice and confuse children into a sexual situation by the abuser, on top of the fact that some of this pornography is child pornography. And it's still allowed on Twitter. It's still allowed on Facebook. Facebook Instant Messenger. So let's talk about that. Go to town.
Well, I think it would be good to back up just a little bit. The internet has dealt with child sexual abuse material since very early on. This has been a conversation since very early on. There are technologies to remove this child sexual abuse material very quickly. The problem is there's so much that it's difficult for that artificial intelligence to remove it at the rate that it comes down. So when Twitter decided to be NSFW, not safe for work, and have porn on it, what I don't think it accounted for, because Tumblr took the porn down, right? Tumblr said no more. And Twitter said, yeah, we'll have it. And what they didn't account for was the massive child sexual abuse material problem that they were going to have. Everybody always says to me on Twitter, where's your proof? Where's your proof? Where's your proof? Check out the New York Times. You can Google New York Times, CSAM.
That article is linked in the description for this show. Yep.
Look at it. If you don't believe the New York Times, check out the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The entire complete data set of what has been reported in 2019, 2018, and every year before that is all there. You can see. In fact, you can even Google the Twitter puts out every year in their transparency report how many child sexual abuse material profiles they've taken down. The problem is, and how many they reported. The problem is, it's way more than what they're reporting. It's way more than what they're taking down. So a lot of people like to point fingers at Facebook. Facebook's under the hot seat right now because 94% of the child sexual abuse material on the internet is reported from Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram. And the thing is, you have to look at that number. Why 94%? Well, that's because Facebook is being more aggressive and tackling it even more. They're reporting more. So just because it's being reported more doesn't mean that there necessarily is more, although I do have a feeling there is a lot more on Facebook. The difficulty is that we're seeing victims and survivors that are repeatedly reporting. So as it is now, a child who's being abused on Twitter, let's use Twitter as an example, has to have a profile, go into Twitter and report their own abuse, and then wait for someone to maybe take it down. I've met survivors where I met victims where their abuse has been viewed 100,000 times. Okay, like plus 100,000 times plus. This is not a joke. These are minor survivors that are reporting this crime, their sexual abuse, the worst moments of their life, and it's being watched on a regular social media platforms. It's unbelievable. I think what's even more unbelievable is that we've now seen big tech's willingness to censor whatever in the heck they want, and they're still unwilling to tackle this issue head on. Also, people like to say, like, I'm talking about something that doesn't exist. When big tech was meeting in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, this was a topic that came up. This is a topic that we talk about all the time. This is nothing new. Another indicator of where the movement is and how the problem is was the big thing with Pornhub recently. Pornhub's feet is to the fire. They've allowed child sexual abuse material, non-consensual sex, and human trafficking on their platform for a very, very, very long time, and it's just now being tackled. We see the exact same problem that's going on Pornhub, on Twitter, and on Facebook as well. It's a nightmare. It is a total nightmare. I don't think that everyone at these platforms is accountable, but I guess they're not speaking about it. And to be brutally honest, I'm getting very, very sick of big tech sitting on their hands and not doing a darn thing when they absolutely have no problem censoring whoever they want to censor, period. They should not be a problem. Why are we even having this conversation in 2020? The technology is there. Why aren't they using the technology?
Well, because they're too busy censoring Donald Trump.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nico.
Yeah. No, it's a little sad that I mean, Eliza, you most definitely have a solid platform, so you get a solid amount of views and looks at your page and other things. You were on what, 2 or 3 other podcasts before ours? You most definitely have. You're consistent. You're busy. So the fact that in 2021, all of us gung ho willingly just sit up and type on this app, and knowing that we are still contributing because of the terms and services, we're still contributing to allowing it to go on. Instead of doing what Eliza's doing, we just mind our business after we hit that retweet of that little girl that went missing. We just mind our business instead of attacking. Because let's be honest, if we all attacked it at the same time and, made Jack really think about, taking certain things down or taking certain things into real consideration opposed to it just being a business move, then there'd be more of a change. It's all about the numbers and, like I said, consistency. But
you're tripping. They do not care in the slightest. They do not care in the slightest. It's about money. It's about the almighty dollar. They could literally care less. They could care less. Remember how we were talking about before that we are all seeing humans as humans. They could care less. We're a number. We're a dollar to them. They're getting advertising sales. They're getting data sales off these children being exploited. This is a lot of money that they're raking in. Same thing as Pornhub. Pornhub was unwilling to do it. And you know what? That just shows the integrity that these platforms have. They are lacking integrity and morality. So you know what? If that's the game they want to play, two can play at that game. And I wish more people would speak up about it. I think it's funny now that the conservatives are coming around. I feel like every conservative in the book is now using survivors as a platform because they have no other leg to stand on. Where were the conservatives talking about the child porn issue on Twitter before everyone was banned?
Right.
Before everyone was banned.
I agree completely. And the thing is, again, you're right. We have to be able to hit them in the pocketbook. One thing and yes, I'm going to use people like Hotep Jesus or Adam Kokesh frequently because these people know what the hell they're talking about. Hotep Jesus is absolutely right. What we need to do to defeat these fucking bad capitalists is be good capitalists. We need to build ourselves up. We need to get ourselves in a position where we can do this and we can make it happen. The reason that places like Gab or MeWe or Minds or any of these other platforms that are rinky-dinky aren't doing it as well as, frankly, they should be is because the federal government is funding Facebook and Twitter at the tune of millions of dollars. So they don't give a shit if your money goes away from them because they know they have Defense Department money that's going to come in and make sure that they snuff out all the anti-war people. So they're going to absolutely go after the people that aren't bringing them money, which means they aren't going to go after the people that are hook, line, and in the midst of all of this sex trafficking. If Epstein didn't prove anything, it should have proved that the government is right there shaking hands with some people. And the bottom line is when they're funding them, There is never going to be a way out. I still use Twitter, and the reason I still use Twitter is because there isn't a better place to get eyeballs. I don't give a shit to only talk to anarchists. I want to talk to people that can learn, because I believe I'm right. I believe eventually everybody will be anarchists. So I think I'm right. So I got to give them information, because most of the people aren't anarchists. So I got to keep them funneling that. And if they've got me in the gulag over in Float, which I am on Float and I am on MeWe, but if they've got me over in the gulag with only the anarchists and the libertarians hanging out, then I'm not going to reach anybody. So I have to use Twitter to try to reach those people. And they know that. And what we have to do is we have to build ourselves. We have to, and again, I feel like a lot I am a broken record, but this is the facts. We have to get freedom-loving people to join forces and start supporting each other instead of bitching about the thing that you didn't like, about one thing that one person said. You need to put that shit aside, because there is a whole bunch of people raping kids. It is time to end that shit on social media. And how you do that is by investing your time and effort into places that don't put up with it.
Well, I think that's a great point. I joined Gab, I think the day before yesterday, because it was absolutely loving their stance on child sexual abuse material. Gab has made many very public statements in the past few days about their stance against child sexual abuse material, calling out the problem. Their answer to that is just no pornography on our platform. And that's the same with Locals, locals.com, where I have my blog and my own community. It's a free speech platform. They've also completely
I'm on
banned
Locals
pornography.
to Eliza. Yep.
Yeah. They've completely banned pornography. My feeling on that is that willing adult sex workers can do their work somewhere else, and that it's getting too muddied, and that if folks, I'm not going to do their work somewhere else other than the internet. I'm just saying there can be specific places designed for willing adult sex workers to do their work where we don't need to have it integrated with our social media. If I'm scrolling through, if I'm eating Subway with my grandma or something, because we eat in the car now because of everything going on, if I'm eating with my grandma and I'm flipping through social, I don't want to see a full regime just pop out unannounced on my regular social media. I'm sitting next to my grandma. You know what I mean?
Right.
And also the same thing goes, you only have to be 13 years old to sign up for Twitter. So what a 13-year-old, under what circumstances should a 13-year-old be exposed to that, let alone to other abuse as well? It's really, and people it's not just child sexual abuse material. It's also bestiality. It's also non-consensual sex. It's also incest porn as well that we're finding on Twitter. It's not just the one thing. I just beat a dead horse with it, because I'm very passionate. I'm very fiery. And honestly, I'm just sick of everybody getting away with it. It's like tech will smile in your face, promise you something, and then absolutely come through with nothing. There was FOSTA SESTA was signed into effect in 2018. Very little has happened to serve survivors since FOSTA SESTA was signed into effect. There have been some survivors that have gotten justice, and there's some survivors whose justice is on the way. But I mean, the law isn't doing it. The government isn't applying pressure. So to me, once again, we cannot wait for the government to do it. The people need to apply pressure. We need to be speaking out against this. We need to be a voice for the voiceless. This isn't an anti-porn argument. This is an anti-human rights violation situation. You know what I mean? And I think that that's where people, so one problem that we do have on social, Twitter, specifically Facebook as well, is we have folks that take the conversation of child sexual abuse and human trafficking, and they take it to a whole other extreme. And what they've done is alienate the conversation, turn it into a conspiracy theory conversation like it doesn't exist. We have real data, real statistics, real examples. It's not like I'm the hugest fan of the New York Times by any means, but the New York Times piece has served me very well over the past year plus, because I can use it as a point of reference.
It hits the normies.
Now,
the normies believe it. So you don't have to clear that hurdle.
Well, the data's in there. You can look it up. I mean, you could Google the data. You could tweet the data. You could post about the data. It's like those are the facts. You don't need to be speaking in some wild thing that we can't prove when we're talking about human trafficking and child sex trafficking, or a lot of people like to point to the elites or the high profile folks. I like to deal more on the national statistic and data average and speak to that rather than just all the way one thing. I think that when the Epstein situation happened, a lot of folks were really open to the problem. Unfortunately, that was such a nuanced, heartbreaking story, and it just really shook people to the core. Like, this is a thing that's happening. That instead of just taking one red pill, they took the whole bottle and flipped out, and now they think I don't know what they did, but we have the data and the statistics and everything to back this up. Twitter itself has admitted on their own platform under the transparency report for 2019 that they have a problem. I just need them to come out and say more. What I would like in my perfect world is for these tech giants to say, come out on their platforms themselves, to be honest and say, hey, look, we have a problem. We can't solve it. Can I get some help? Can we get some help? There are tech folks out there that would step up and help with this issue, but nobody's being as honest with how big the problem is.
What about Tesla? I remember attempting to read the article. And then on a few podcasts, you were mentioning Tesla was going to support you with something. How did that event go, and things of that nature?
The Tesla event was absolutely incredible. Definitely one of the highlights of 2020 for me, for sure, because I got to be around real humans. But basically, it was a group called Miles Through Time, which is a car. They have a car museum. So it's all different cars from all different time periods. It was Miles Through Time and Tesla. And then we did a fundraising event for Our Rescue. So Our Rescue does actually reminds me a little bit more of what you guys were talking about. Tim Ballard has a group of people that go predominantly overseas and rescue children, but they do it I don't want to say the old school way, but they do it a different. Does that make sense?
They do it themselves.
There are a lot of ex-military, a lot of ex-law enforcement, but they do it. They work with the local law enforcement, but they do it a little bit more the old school way, would be what I would say. But we raise money for Our Rescue, and the Tesla community has been so incredible. I just realized that it's a group of folks that really want to help, and when they saw the cause, they just caught fire for it. And I'm really impressed with them. So I definitely wanted to continue to work with the Tesla community. And I also see a lot of potential there because the Tesla community is also interested in technology. And I firmly believe that we need the technology to level up on our social media and big tech platforms to pull down this child sexual abuse material and the human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really do think that, we're getting close to a 2-hour mark, so I'm going to try to wind down. Try to wind down a little bit. But one of the things that Adam has said on multiple occasions is that if we could get all the interference out of what technology is capable of, then the sky is the limit. We would have already we'd already have flying cars if we could just get these assholes out of the way and let us create. There are good people out there who want to use technology for good purposes. Right now with 3D printing alone, the ability that the American people specifically, because let's be honest, the American people are the rich people, but the ability
worldwide, no doubt.
For sure. The American people have the ability to take technology and make life better is amazing and has never been seen it barely is seen in my lifetime, much less my grandparents would have had no idea this shit was coming. And the ability that we have to use technology to make our lives better and to make people across the globe's lives better is in front of us. If we would just get these heinous, controlling, thieving, murdering bastards out of our way.
Well, in the meantime, while we don't have them out of our way, there are people who are trying to do something. We talked about Gab, we talked about locals. There's a bunch of different things, but I also want to give a shout out to some of our friends. They came on our podcast a few weeks back. Saul and Corey from the Brown Paper Bag podcast. They have launched their own social media and streaming platform. This is our first episode ever that we are simulcasting here on YouTube. We are also here on LibreTV.co. So go there, support those guys. They are doing a lot to try and promote this. And one of the things that they are dead set, they want it to be a complete free speech platform, unless you are doing anything that is non-consensual sex or any kind of child pornography or anything like that, any kind of child abuse. And so I want to prop those guys up, because they are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting their heart into it. And I really want to give those guys the big respect, because we are right now simulcasting. We are live on their platform and this platform. I should have said something about it earlier. I got caught up in the moment. I
shared it on Twitter.
Got a goss on our stream here, but I did share it on Twitter earlier, and so that we do have that. Let me unmute Nico. My bad. I had you still muted. But the other thing is too. I talked to Eliza about this earlier today. They had the thing about Twitter banning people for saying #learn-to-code, because they thought it was a pattern of was it like piling on, dog piling, or whatever they call it, or something like that. Well, I don't know. Fuck it. I'm ready to pile on with the hashtag learn to ban child porn, because that shit has got to go. So if you don't mind, I would like to get this shit trending. And I think Eliza, are you on board with wanting to get this trending? Learn to ban child porn.
Completely.
Hashtag learn to ban child porn. So
I'm always on board. Listen.
Yeah. So look,
I proved the other day. I would say it straight to your face.
Right.
I'll say it straight to your face. I'm sick of it.
I'm sick of it. Hashtag learn to ban child porn, because for God's sake, man, like if we're gonna ban people because they put goddamn hashtag learn to. I realize, like, if people were getting like 1,000 of those or whatever, but like I'm still like, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, on the hierarchy of shit to be worried about, I don't give a fuck. I care about some kids being abused and having that video and those images being a vehicle and an incentive to continue that abuse. And I'm done with it. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have you on here, because I'm fed up. I'm sick of it. I don't want it to happen anymore, and I want to do everything I can. I want to offer you the platform one more time to tell us what else we can do that we aren't already doing to help promote it.
I'm sorry to break in. There's also a secondary situation that we're not talking about in the conversation as well. So when someone that's a survivor, or just your everyday person, witnesses this child sexual abuse material, they are also traumatized. And I've had survivors call me after witnessing this abuse material. I myself cannot look at it. I avoid it at all costs.
Same here.
I avoid it at all costs, because what it does for me mentally, it sets me to a place that I never want to be. And for other survivors, they get pushed to the brink of suicide just by witnessing this. And they're reaching out to help, asking me for help. Like, hey, I need help. I just saw child sexual abuse material, or they say child porn or whatever they're going to say. And there are secondary ramifications of this. Also, it's good to know that these pedophiles will make videos and these images, and then they'll save them and send them to other pedophiles, sell them to other pedophiles. This abuse lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
When it's on the internet, it's written in pen. It's not written in pencil. So sometimes this abuse material will pop up years and years and years later. So it's never going anywhere. We cannot have it out there for the world to see. This is a human rights violation. And the fact that Jack Dorsey has the audacity to sit on a panel at Oslo Freedom Forum and be the keynote speaker at a human rights conference this year, knowing that a human rights violation is happening right on his very platform and he's profiting from it, takes a lot of nerve. Takes a lot of nerve. But that's okay. I got a lot of nerve too.
Yeah,
so
we're
gonna meet fire with fire. You don't want to use the technology, I'll find somebody that will make better technology and use it for you. Period.
Yeah, building bridges. The thing is, what these grasshoppers don't realize is the ants are about to fucking hit back. And we're coming together and we're going to protect our kids. We're going to do it. That's what's going to happen. And they don't know. They think that they've got us under control, and they are wrong. And there is nothing that can stop an idea whose time has come. And freedom is on the horizon. And it is by coming together and defending our natural rights that we get that done.
Yeah, no doubt.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, listen, I can sit in a room full of people where we might not agree on anything, but the fact that child sexual abuse material and human trafficking should be completely eliminated. We might have different ideas on how to get there. I'm always open to that conversation. But this is something that is no longer a negotiable. This is a non-negotiable. So yes, learn to ban child porn is what needs to be done, because I mean, listen, and I need tech folks. I need folks in tech to speak out about this. If you write code, if you're an engineer, do you know how pathetic it is to know that survivors are learning to code so that they can try to help remove this? I even thought myself trying to learn how to code. I'm serious. I'm like an idiot. I don't even have a GED. I've thought about learning to code myself.
You're not an idiot. You may not have a GED, but you are not an idiot. I guarantee you that much.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Chad. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like I'm out there some computer tech genius. It's just that I'm like, no, what do we need to do to get this done? Like, what do we need to do to get it done? So I'm glad this is an area that we can come together. To answer your question that you asked a minute ago, what people can do, first and foremost, get educated about the crime. There's so much information out there. You know, I always direct folks to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Yes, of course, the government is involved. But
numbers in the description as well. So.
Yeah, you have to go somewhere where the information's accurate, where it's not a rumor, where it's not someone trying to cultivate a situation where there's misinformation. So always, I recommend folks go to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and from there, you can start to piece out exactly what the problem is and how you can best be of service. And then again, just use your time, talent, and treasure to help out the movement and the survivor space. We need your help. Even just letting folks know that this is a real problem. Like I said earlier, Google the closest town to you, Google the city next to you, Google your city, and Google that and human trafficking. See what pops up. You'll notice it's in your backyard. I firmly believe that continuously blaming it on the elites is like turning our back on what's actually happening in our own communities. So we need to stop blaming everything on the global elite and start holding our own accountable as well.
Yeah, word.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
From the top to the bottom.
All of Eliza's links, all the ones that I can think of, put in the description below, as well as including her Cash App. So if you want to donate to Eliza to help her do what she's doing, to help her to continue to do what she's doing, because this is a full-time job all on its own. You can go down there and you can donate there. You can also go to her locals. That's down below as well. You can subscribe there. It's not that expensive. You just go donate or whatever. Sign up for, what is it, like $7-8 a month or something like that.
Actually, you could be a part of my local community completely for free. If you want to talk. Yeah, if you want to, that's just if you just want to watch and see what I'm saying and read my post.
Oh, that's for the extra content, the bonus content. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, for
But
the
yeah,
bonus
definitely
content,
go in there and throw her some love for sure.
it's just a couple
Yeah.
bucks.
Yeah.
And that's a great way. It's a free speech platform. Once again, it's censorship free. That's where I hang out. I hang out in my local community, but I actually hang out a lot more in other locals communities. That's my real social media. That's how I call it. That's my real social media.
Gotcha.
I want to thank you, Eliza, for coming on, and it's been a joy talking to you because again, I get passionate about this stuff, and
Me too.
you know,
You don't.
yeah, I know it's crazy, and again, for me, the solutions are in front of us, and they are each other. The solutions are coming together as a community and finding whatever solutions. I'm not going to have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers.
No.
None of us have all of the answers. But together, we probably have most of them. So we just got to reach out to one another and find those connections.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me on. It actually was a lovely conversation. I was really looking forward to this tonight. And Chad, you've been amazing, very supportive. Hotep Nation's been incredibly supportive to me. You know, there's been so many folks that have rallied behind me and my voice. It really touches me in a way that would be hard to articulate because I just never saw it coming. So I just really appreciate everything that you guys do. And Chad, thank you for just being a good person and a good friend. I've enjoyed all the conversations.
No, love you, sister. It's all love. What you got, Nico?
Oh, many blessings. Thank you very much for presenting this, not just to our worldview, but to our consumers as well, because I have a madhouse of siblings, and if anything were to happen to them, I would legit burn Chicago down, and the rest of the world would follow after me. Y'all can miss me with that shit. I am a very, very family-oriented person,
Nico.
And for things, for it to get to this, for traumatized, for things of this nature, especially young, old, anything. It's just going against human rights, being a big voice, especially against somebody who just throws a fat ass middle finger in your face, for you to continuously keep pushing the narrative and keep pushing the pace. I can do nothing but praise that and appreciate it. And thanks a ton for showing up on our show and lending us your voice.
Yeah, I didn't realize my balls were that big.
Watch out now. No, but seriously. Yeah, and thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody who came in from our community and from your community. I think we got a nice little mashup, and I saw them kind of talking to each other in the comments and everything. That was beautiful to see in the chat. And you know, we really, really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Hotep Nation, Hotep Jesus, and Uncle Hotep, and all those guys. There's been a real, I don't know. It's been crazy. An explosion of like these connections of all these different worlds. The Michael Malice community coming together with Hotep Nation, and like it's wild. It is a blast to watch and to be a part of. And I don't know. I don't know that we definitely wouldn't be doing all this stuff if it wasn't for those guys, because there's a lot. Like Nico came from Hotep Nation to this show, and I met you through Brian and all that stuff. Like it's an amazing thing. One last time, anything else you want to that you forgot or that you want to throw out there? Let's do it, because I'm about to go into the little wrap up of the show. So I want to give you one more time, Eliza, if there's anything you want to plug or anything like that you got coming up in the immediate future that you want to let people know about.
I do have some great podcasts that are coming up this week and next week, so stay tuned. My Twitter and locals will be announcing each one of those as they come along. But in every interview that I do, I just try to say, like, if there's any survivors out there that are thinking about reaching out for help, or if there's something that resonated with you today, even if you're a survivor of past or recent trauma, please reach out for help. Even if it's a survivor of sexual assault, domestic violence, or human trafficking, there are so many folks out there that care about you. There are so many folks that love you. Here you have 3 great men that are really willing to have these conversations. There are so many people out there that love you. Please reach out for help. There is help and hope and healing out there. I always recommend that folks reach out to the hotline. You know, I know there's so many people that are struggling right now, and the hotlines, unfortunately, are my best way to tell folks to reach out for help. Don't be nervous when you reach out for help. They will connect you with an advocate that's trained to assess your needs and to provide you with resources in your area. So just if that's something that if it resonated, if conversation resonates with anyone, please reach out for help. When I reached out for help, I felt about as weak and about as low as I can feel. And it was actually when I was at the strongest point of my entire life. I didn't realize that I was at the threshold of being as strong as I could possibly be. So that's I just wanted to say that. And I just want to thank you guys so much. And I will see you in the battleground.
For sure. Right. Yeah. So if I want to add one thing to what she just said, because I know you talked about this feeling dead inside and not feeling like you were alive or wanted to be alive or anything like that. For anybody who's out there who may be struggling with this, because I've dealt with it before, and I know a lot of people do. Don't kill yourself. Stay alive. There's light. There's light. There's love. We're here, and we'll be here. So before I start crying, like I did the other night on the Jean Core project, I don't want to do that again. Everybody, please take a moment right now, one more time, to hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel and to the Patreon. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications as soon as the episodes come out, and be sure to share this with your friends and family. 2 shares to speed the spread of this podcast, and go support Eliza and everything that she's doing. And everybody who came into the show, again, we thank you so much, and we love you all, and we want to remind you once again to stay free, my friends.
I agree.